Excellent. So I think we'll go ahead and kick off.အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါ My name is Thirita Mon. I am the CEO of the Myanmar Institute of Directors, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's webinar on cybersecurity. And I won't be doing most of the talking today. I will be listening to three experts who have joined us. The first one is Pierre Noel, and I will you all have the bios in the webinar invitation, but we are very fortunate that Pierre not only is an expert on cybersecurity, but also has been to Myanmar multiple times and knows the landscape here very well. So the way we're going to run the event today is that we are going to have about 40-minute introduction from Pierre on the landscape of cybersecurity, especially in Asia, and why all of us as board directors should pay attention to cybersecurity. And then we're going to welcome two additional experts, both of whom are, I'm delighted to say, are board members of the Myanmar Institute of Directors. The first is Dr. Tun That, who is very, very well known in the IT industry in Myanmar, having founded MIT, which is one of the foremost institutions in IT, and very, very well regarded. So the title for that session is The Myanmar Context, and joining him is Umay Pomye, who is an actual expert in cybersecurity. So we'll be having somewhat of a panel discussion for, again, around about 40 minutes. And throughout, we'll be taking questions. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. And I'll be monitoring those questions and weaving them in so that we have an interactive discussion as much as possible. And obviously, during the panel discussion, please ask questions in the chat box, and we will try to answer all of your questions as possible. We have made plenty of time for that. Also, let me say a word to our Myanmar-speaking colleagues joining. တကယ်လို့မြန်မာလိုမေးချင်တယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်း chat box ထဲမှာလည်းမြန်မာလိုမေးလို့ရပါတယ်ရှင့်။ပြီးတော့အားလုံးရဲ့အခြေအနေကိုကြည့်ပြီးတော့ပေါ့နော်။အထူးသဖြင့်ဦးထွန်းသူရတက်နဲ့ဦးမိုက်ဖုံမြင့်ကလည်းဗမာလိုရှင်းလင်းတင်ပြသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်ရှင်။ဆိုတော့တကယ်လို့တစ်ခုခုမရှင်းဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဗမာလိုရှင်းပေးပါလို့ပြောလို့ရှိရင်လည်းကျမတို့မြန်မာလိုရှင်းပေးပါမယ်ရှင်။ so တော့အားလုံးလည်းပွင့်ပွင့်လင်းလင်းဆွေးနွေးကြပါဒီကတော့ intro to cybersecurity သဘောမျိုးဖြစ်သွားတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ဂါဂနာနာမေးစရာရှိလို့ရှိရင်လည်းကျမတို့မဖြေနိုင်တော့လည်းနောက်ပိုင်း follow up လုပ်ဖို့လည်းကျမတို့စူးစမ်းပါမယ်ရှင် so what I mentioned is that we'll try to address questions both in Myanmar and English. And this is more of an overview webinar on cybersecurity, but certainly if you have any more in-depth questions that we can direct to our experts to answer to you at a later date as a follow-up, we will also attempt to do that. So please do ask any questions that you would like. And for those that are relevant for today's webinar, we'll take them today. If not, we'll follow up with you. But before I hand over to Pierre, can I just also say, thank you for everybody for joining us. Thank you to our members. There are a number of you who are also non-members of the Myanmar Institute of Directors. I would welcome you to come and take a look at our website, come and talk to us, and join us if that would be appropriate for you. And all this, including the Myanmar Institute of Directors, would not be possible without the support of our donors. And I would especially like to thank the governments of United Kingdom and Australia. And through their support, the IFC, whose team in corporate governance lends us incredible support. We are using their web platform today. So thank you also for all the IFC professionals who are supporting us at the moment. And of course, thank you to our speakers and panelists. So Pierre, may I hand over to you?
My pleasure. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. A very good, warm afternoon to everyone. It's a delight for me. It's a true pleasure to be given the opportunity to speak to the Myanmar people and especially the directors in Myanmar. I love your country and anything I can do to assist, you just have to name it and I will do it. Can you show the presentation, please, so that I can start? Thank you very much. So this presentation is meant to last no more than 40 minutes. I would very much welcome any questions you might have in any direction. Mike and Dr. Toon, together, we are probably able to answer almost any question you would have in the context of cybersecurity, or so I believe. My focus is really on the responsibilities at the board level. What is it that board directors or overall executives of organization need to know on cybersecurity, and why is it important? So my intention is not to go into technical details unless you have questions, but much more to look at it from a non-technology point of view, a non-specialist point of view, look at it from a board point of view. Next slide, please. So the different topics I will be addressing. First and foremost, what are the responsibilities of the board? And I'm not going to talk necessarily purely in the context of Myanmar. I'm going to talk into best practice responsibilities for the boards based on regulation, based on legal framework that I'm seeing, internationally applied. I would like also to elaborate on the myths and facts associated with cybersecurity. And in order to better understand your risks, I would like to spend a little bit of time trying to enumerate the bad guys so that you will have a better understanding on what type of risks you are subject to, and you will be able to better position your defense, or at least being able to allocate proper time and thought about this type of bad guys. Then I will finish by going into an action list, simple things that the board should do in order to ensure that you remain on top of the cybersecurity risks. Next slide, please. What are the risks and responsibilities for the board and senior executives when it comes to cyber? Next slide, please. The responsibilities, before I speak about the responsibilities, I want to share the reality about your risks. I'm not talking about the realities about your company's risks. I'm talking about you personally. If you are a director, if you are a senior executive of an organization that is impacted by a cybersecurity incident, your personal risk will be at 3 levels. You might see or have significant money loss, because if you are a director, perhaps you are a shareholder of the organization, perhaps you own the organization, a significant amount of cybersecurity incident will generate value destruction, either by the bad guy stealing money or by the bad guy hitting at your reputation and your clients running away. So there will be a money impact for yourself as a director or senior executive. So that's one reason why you have to worry. There will be a personal reputation damage. Increasingly, people, and again, Myanmar is somewhat different. Myanmar is emerging, so I would not necessarily compare Myanmar with the UK, for example, of course, but I see that as a trend happening all over the world. I was talking to Indonesia not that long ago, and definitely this is a trend we are seeing in Indonesia as well. Increasingly, it is expected that the directors should be on top of the game when it comes to cybersecurity management. So if we see that an organization has been hit with a cybersecurity incident, increasingly people will look at the senior executives and board directors and hold them responsible. Consequently, personal reputation damage. If you are associated with an organization that suffered a significant cybersecurity incident, you will have some personal reputation damage. Then we can also have regulatory and legal infringement. In some countries, it is explicitly said that the directors have got to do everything they can to ensure that they've got good understanding on all the risks associated with the organization. If they choose not to look at the cyber risk and there is a cybersecurity incident, it is their responsibility, because they should have done the due diligence. They should have inquired on the reality of the risk. They should have analyzed that risk, and they should have ensured that something was done. So these are the real risks for you personally as a director or senior executive of an organization. Next slide, please. What are the overall responsibilities of the board when it comes to cyber? It's pretty simple. You are responsible to set up good governance. So you have to identify who is responsible for addressing your cybersecurity risk into the organization. You have to identify a path for that person to be able to communicate with the board and the senior executive and explain what these risks are. So you have to set that governance, that mechanism within your organization so that cybersecurity is addressed and is communicated. You have, as the board or senior executive, you have the responsibility to know about the cybersecurity risks and do something about it. You can no longer say, oops, I didn't know. So you have to have an understanding. You have to ask on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, it depends on which sector you are in. You have to ask, what are my cybersecurity risks? What is my cybersecurity exposure? What are we doing to address these risks that are considered to be unacceptable? Next slide, please. You, as a director, senior executive, have to understand and handle the risks. I'm somewhat repeating myself here, but if you don't pay attention to cybersecurity risks, then you are dealing with what we would call unknown risks. You could, in the past, you could always say, I didn't know there was such a risk. So, of course, I got caught off guard. Now you can no longer do that. It is expected that you have to dig and know the risks. You cannot leave any risks unknown or untested. So it is your responsibility to know more about what could happen. But the fact that you are attending this session is a good evidence that you want to pay attention to cybersecurity. So that's definitely a good thing. Next slide, please. Let's go into some of the myths and facts associated with cybersecurity. And again, I'm going to go very high level, not going to go into technical details, but let's look at these myths. Next slide, please. First myth is that there is a belief that cyber attacks will only happen against government and financial organizations, such as banks. Well, it is true that we see a lot of attacks against finance organizations. It is no longer true that attacks will only take place against finance organizations. We see attacks taking place against any possible type of organization. Case in point here, some examples: Saudi Aramco, petroleum company, Ministry of Health, a government agency, Honda, car maker, Marsh with their shipping company, a Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance company, GitHub, it's a tech solution. They all have been attacked. Why is that? There's one element I want you to remember and to keep very clear in your mind. Cyber criminals have a very keen interest in attacking everyone because cyber criminals want to make money from these attacks. You have to understand that cyber criminals right now make more money through cyber attacks than any other way of attack they used to do before. They make more money in doing cyber attacks than in prostitution, selling drugs, and all these kind of things. So for them, attacking everyone is a good way to make a lot of money. And so there are different ways to attack you. And there are different reasons why they will attack you. But at the end of the day, the cyber criminals will try to make money out of you. So you are all exposed. Everyone is exposed. Next slide, please. This is a hard fact. What is the likelihood that your organization will be impacted by a cyber incident over the next 3 years? The likelihood is 100%, 100% sure that you will be exposed to a cybersecurity incident. It's inevitable, and everyone is being attacked. Some attacks are very generic attacks. That could be what we call a phishing email attack. Some attacks might be very specific because people have a good understanding on your assets, on who you are, on your culture, and they know exactly where to attack. So it might be different types of attack. It might be a denial of service attack, where people will stop you from using the internet and they will ask you money in return, ransom. But the fact is, 100% chance that you will have a cybersecurity incident within the next 3 years. Next slide, please. I don't know if you're very familiar with this notion of silver bullet. The silver bullet is It's to say that there is a solution. There is a fantastic magical solution that will fix the problem. In cybersecurity, there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution, one technology, one team of consultants who can come and fix your cybersecurity problems. Proper cybersecurity is a combination of many different things. It's a combination of educating your people, having the right people on board to help you, getting the right information on what could happen and what is best practice, and putting in place technologies. But technologies evolve, bad guys evolve, policies evolve, regulation evolves. So you might find yourself with good technology and good people today. It doesn't mean that you will be secured tomorrow. Perhaps tomorrow a new type of attack will come for which you do not necessarily have the right security. So please do not believe anyone who comes to you and says that they are expert in cybersecurity and just by giving them money, they will fix all your problems. That does not exist. I was very fortunate to be the CSO, the Chief Security Officer for Microsoft, covering the whole of Asia. Microsoft made it very public that the budget for cybersecurity is $1 billion US. So every year, Microsoft spends $1 billion US just to cover the cybersecurity aspects of Microsoft business. Does that mean that Microsoft will never have a security incident? No. Everyone will have a cybersecurity incident, no matter how much money you invest. Banks are known to invest $500 million US. I mean, the big American banks, they invest $500 million or even more US dollars to protect themselves. Does that mean that they will never be attacked? No, of course, they are attacked all the time. So there is no one silver bullet. One solution, as I will explain later, one solution is to share, is to build a community of trusted people and share information so that together you are stronger than if you are alone. I will explain a little bit more about that. I see that we have some very good questions. I'm sorry, I did not pay attention to the questions so far. Let me see.
I think we're fine for now, Pierre. There's a specific question. We'll address that later. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you very much for that. Okay, next slide, please. Let's have a quick look on who are the bad guys, because the bad guys can come from different angles and they will have different reasons to attacking you. And perhaps in your line of business, some bad guys will never have an interest in attacking you. So to know that is already to be well prepared. It's always intelligence that is good to have. So let's have a quick look at the bad guys. Next slide, please. We have four, to make it simple, we have four types of bad guys who will have different techniques and different motivations to attacking you. Very different techniques and very different motivations. So let's have a look at them one by one. Next slide. The activist or activism. These are quite well known because activists are people who want to attack your organization and they want to make sure everybody knows that they have attacked your organization. These people is an exception in the landscape of cybersecurity. Well, more or less an exception. They're not interested into your money. They're interested into what you represent. So activism will attack you because they don't like you. They might not like you for a lot of reasons. It could be religious, it could be cultural, it could be because you advocate something they don't like. You know, you might be a tobacco company and they don't like tobacco companies, or you might be fishing company and they don't like fishing company, whatever. These people don't like you and they want to plant a flag. They want to attack you. They want to steal information from you and they want to share that information with the rest of the world to tell the rest of the world how bad you are. They want to deface your website and say nasty things about you. Okay. Are they really dangerous? No. I mean, most of the time, this is what I call a nuisance. It's embarrassing if you have an incident. When I was at Microsoft, I had one incident like that. It's embarrassing. It's not tremendously embarrassing. From all the problems I could have, this is usually the least one. the smallest one, except if they steal some very confidential information of yours and expose that information to the public. So if you have this kind of very confidential information that could provide bad reputation, then you have a significant risk because they will try to find it and they will try to expose it. But so I leave it to you to think about your organization, to think about the environment where you work, and decide whether or not you should be exposed to activism. Not everyone is exposed to activism. It's only, again, if some people have a reason to hate you for what you represent, who you are, or what you believe. Next slide, please. These are the nation state actors. These are country or army people attacking you, your organization, your country for diplomacy reason. That is, there's a lot behind that. There's a lot of different things happening. You certainly heard that North Korea has attacked many people. We hear that Russia is attacking people. We hear that China is attacking people, Israel, Iran, United States. Reality is, everyone attacks everyone at some degree. It's normal. Very normal, like spying is normal. Spying is part of what a government does. They want to know somebody else's secret and they want to protect their own secret. So these things have to be considered normal. If a nation has an army, it is normal that this army will focus on cybersecurity and will create some weapons, if you will, to be able to attack or disrupt other countries. So as to whether you can be exposed to such a nation state actor, an attack coming from a country, it really depends. You have two types of reason why a nation might want to attack you. One reason is perhaps you are government. You work for a government agency and another government doesn't like you and wants to prove that they are bigger than you, stronger than you, whatever. So if you're a government agency, you're probably always exposed to a nation state attack. You could also be a critical infrastructure organization. You are the telecommunication company in Myanmar, you are the electricity company in Myanmar, you are food distribution, you are water distribution, you are a critical infrastructure. So disrupting a critical infrastructure is also something that nation state would do. So if you are considered a critical infrastructure for your organization, you might be exposed to this kind of attacks. We also have very, very, very clever types of attacks where the bad guys, the nation who are attacking you, will not really attack you. They will create fear. Because if they create fear amongst the population will feel unstable, will feel uncertain, and this will create the movements of people that a nation might be interested to create. So there are a lot of reasons at the diplomacy level, at the political level, why a nation might want to attack another nation. That is the bad news. The good news is there's almost very little you can do if you are attacked by this kind of nation-state attack, cybersecurity nation-state attack. It's really up to your government to mount the proper defense. These attacks are usually so sophisticated that no matter how much budget you have, no matter how many people you have, you will probably be impacted by the attack. So it's really up to the government to protect you on that one, not up to you. Next slide, please. All right, and these are the real bad people. These are the people I fear the most. These are the criminal organizations, the mafia, the triads, the yakuza. I fear them because they are ruthless. They will stop at nothing to make money. So the only reason why they will attack you, it's not because they don't like you. They just don't care about who you are. They want your money. And there are many ways they can get your money, including some very nasty ways. So you might know about a simple attack, which is I am a bank, the bad guys attack me and they steal money from my bank and transfer that money into another bank and then another, and I cannot trace it back. So I have lost millions and millions of US dollars. We've seen these attacks taking place many, many times. Initially these attacks took place against the big banks such as Citibank, and then we had attacks against national banks. Probably heard something that happened in Asia a few years ago, and the money, billions of dollars, got stolen. Okay, that's one way to attack. But the bad guys have evolved other ways to attack. One way is they could create an email that looks like it's an email coming from the CEO of your organization, and they send that email to the person in charge of the finance of the organization. And in this email, they say, I'm about to close a very important deal. I absolutely need you to wire $2 million to this bank account. It's critical. Do it now. If the email is very well forged, people might believe it and they might do it. I have seen that happening many, many, many times in many different types of culture, many types of countries. So this is typical phishing. We can also have weird or worse type of attack. You may or may not know, but over the last 2 weeks, we have seen a huge amount of what we call DDoS attack, denial of service attack, especially against the finance industry. I cannot disclose. If you don't know about that, just believe me, many banks and many stock exchange have been attacked over the last 2 weeks, including the very, very big organizations. And this attack was a ransomware. So what happened is bad guys sent an email to the bank and said, we are going to attack you unless you pay us 20 Bitcoins. So 200, 300,000 US dollars. And so if you don't pay, they start attacking you. And if they succeed in the attack, you will have significant operational problems. So we have seen that taking place. To best of my knowledge, no one has paid the ransom and the attacks was not that severe, but we have seen much more severe attacks in the past. I have seen an example of a factory in Germany that also was subject to ransomware. So an iron factory, this is not a bank, iron factory, all they do is they smelt iron, they create, iron sheets and nothing else. They got attacked. The bad guys sent them a ransom document saying, we can attack you. You have to pay us millions of dollars. If you don't do that, we will significantly disrupt your operation. The director of the factory decided not to pay. The bad guys attacked and they managed to access some critical systems in the factory, and the factory exploded. I mean, part of the factory exploded because they managed to burn the iron beyond a certain temperature or things like that. And so the factory got partly destroyed. The cost of that attack was significantly more, 1,000 times more than the amount of money that the bad guys wanted. But so that is it's a nasty type of attack, but we have seen that happening. I have seen recently, well, it happens very often, unfortunately. I have seen recently hospitals being attacked. If you are in the healthcare industry, if you have an hospital, you usually, if you have some budget, you don't usually spend that budget on cybersecurity. You will use that budget to buy MRI, to pay nurses better. I mean, usually cybersecurity is not the first element in which you will invest if you are a healthcare organization, if you are a hospital. And so what I have seen was pretty nasty. The bad guys sent a message to the director of an hospital and they said, we're going to attack you and we are going to disrupt your hospital to the point where people will probably die, because if people are undergoing surgery at the moment of the attack, perhaps we will turn off the electricity, we will disrupt everything, and these people will die unless you pay us money. And so it's a fascinating situation, because as a director of the hospital, you do not have good security. You know that if someone would really want to attack you, they will probably succeed. So what should you do? Should you pay and cross your fingers, hope that the bad guys will be happy with the money and not attack you? Or should you not pay and cross your fingers that the bad guys don't really attack you? It's a very difficult. I tend to advise that perhaps we should pay, but in some countries, it's illegal to pay. It's illegal to pay blackmail. So we also have to keep that into our mind. Cyber criminals are the most dangerous because they will stop at nothing to make money from you. And you don't have to be a bank to be subject to these attacks, as hopefully I just demonstrated. Anyone can be subject to an attack from cyber criminal. Next slide, please. And then we have your IT administrator. You know, this person, this lady who looks after the IT into your organization, do you realize that this person has all the super user administrators accounts? He or she has all the power over your IT. All that takes is that one day that person wakes up and decides that for whatever reason, she does not like you anymore. For whatever reason, she decides that she hates you, actually. She might just delete all the information you have. She might just steal the information you have and sell it to someone else. Or perhaps she's forced to do something against you. I had this case of kidnapping. The bad guys, the cyber criminal, kidnapped the family of an IT administrator and forced the IT administrator to steal information and give it to the bad guys. Otherwise, they would kill his wife and kid. So be careful with your system administrator. He's God. He's got access to everything. So you have to put in place mechanism to ensure that at no point in time the IT administrator can do everything he wants. There must be some procedures, some techniques, some technologies to ensure that whatever he does, we can track it, and he does not have access to all the super user passwords and account at any point in time. He has to ask for it and has to have a very good reason for that. So next slide, please. What can you specifically do to make an impact and reduce the cybersecurity risks in your organization as a director or a senior executive? Next slide. First and foremost, you have to have a pretty good understanding on which assets are worth protecting. Look at the quote here. If you protect your paper clips and diamond with equal vigor, you will soon have more paper clips and fewer diamonds. In your organization, you've got high value assets and you've got low value assets. You probably know some of these high value assets. I doubt that you know all of these high value assets, because some assets might be of high value to the bad guys in the sense that if they attack you on these assets, they might cripple your organization. So that asset is not necessarily a bank account. It could be, you know, some small information, but if they change that small information, you can no longer operate. They could encrypt your customer database, for example, and make sure that you don't have a good backup. So suddenly, you don't have access to your customer database. You cannot invoice, you cannot answer calls and things like that. Your responsibility as director or senior executive of an organization is to make sure that you put in place the necessary mechanism to have a good understanding on what are the assets worth protecting. Don't try to protect everything in your organization. If you do that, the quote that is mentioned here will apply to you. You will see that you are wasting a lot of your money on protecting things that are not worth protecting, and the bad guys will attack the things that are really worth protecting. So your responsibility as board director, put in place a mechanism to have a pretty good understanding on which risks apply to which asset. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, the likelihood that you will be attacked is 100%. You will be attacked. And the way people will look at you is not because you have been attacked or not. People will evaluate you and judge you on the quality of your incident management, on the way you react once you are attacked. Are you going to try to hide everything and not tell everyone that you have been attacked? Are you going, on the other end, to disclose? And if so, what are you going to disclose and to who? Are you going to bring some experts to investigate and try to recover whatever can be recovered? All these things are very important because they will determine your reputation, and they will also determine if the regulator or the law enforcement agencies are going to look at you in a nasty way. So as board director, senior executive, you have to have an incident management against cybersecurity incident. You have to make sure your organization has a cybersecurity incident response in place. And equally, you have to make sure it is regularly tested independently. So not by the people who created this cybersecurity incident response, but by other people. And the result must be escalated to the board for information and decision. So every 3 months, every 6 months, someone will come, someone will simulate an attack. We call that a tabletop exercise. It doesn't have to be a real attack. And we will examine the way your cybersecurity incident management handles this. Believe me, the first time you will do that, it will cripple you. You will see that your incident management is absolutely not the right one. And the second time, it will be a little bit better. The third time, a little bit better. And after 4 or 5 times, yeah, you will start having an incident management that can really address the situation when you have a cybersecurity incident. This is your responsibility as a board or as a senior level, a senior executive in the organization. There must be a cybersecurity incident management plan in place. Next slide, please. Governance. Governance is critical in cybersecurity. Let me give you a simple example. I have seen, and I still see, a lot of organizations where they place the person in charge of cybersecurity under the IT director or the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. In most situations, this is wrong. This is totally wrong, because there is a huge conflict of interest. Let me explain why. The IT director, her job is to make sure that they've got good IT and respect the budget. The cybersecurity person, her job is to make sure that they understand the risks associated with the environment, including IT, and ensure that we make the necessary modification. So, if a cybersecurity director who works for the IT director comes to the IT director and say, your configuration is bad, you have to change your firewall, you have to make a new purchase for $20,000 because your firewall is not of a good quality, there's some chance that the IT director will say, no way, I'm not going to do that. I don't have the money to do that. I'm going to ignore your point. So this is a clear conflict of interest, because as far as the board is concerned, the board should know the position of the cybersecurity people. And so if you have the cybersecurity person under the IT director has got every possibility to overrule the information coming from the cybersecurity director. This is one of the reasons why cybersecurity people should not be under IT. They should be under risk, or they should report directly to the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. They should not be inside audit either, because it's different than audit. You have to put in place this mechanism to ensure that you've got the right person with the right responsibility. If one way to characterize that person, the person in charge of cybersecurity, that person must have difficulty to sleep at night, because she knows she is in charge of the cybersecurity of the organization. So I want that person to continuously think only about cybersecurity. What could go wrong? Are we at the right level of security? I want that person to continuously worry about that. So you should not have that person to do cybersecurity and something else. That just is not right. She has to focus only on cyber, and she must have the opportunity to report to the board every 3 months or every 6 months and explain her position, what she believes to be the risks for the organization. So she's the person who has that responsibility. Also, it's equally important that everyone in the organization understand that she is in charge of cybersecurity. A simple way to test that is you ask an assistant if you have a phishing attack, or if you have some spam, or if you have a virus on your computer, do you know who you should call? Do you know who you should inform? And if that assistant in your organization is not able to answer that question, she does not know who is the person in charge of cybersecurity, you know that you have to do some more education, because that question should be easily answered. So next slide, please. Yes, I believe this is my last slide, and to me, this is probably the best advice I can give to organization. Your cybersecurity should not be a business secret. The way you protect your organization is not what I would call a business differentiator. You should not hide from your competitors that you are using product XYZ or you are doing security this way rather than that way. This is not a business differentiator. And in fact, I strongly advise you to share that information with other organizations. I live in Switzerland at the moment, and over the past 2.5 years, I built something that we call the Cyber Hub. In fact, I came to all the finance organizations in Switzerland. I met up with all the cybersecurity directors of all the banks, all the insurance companies in Switzerland, and I told them something very simple. I said, if you are alone to fight against the bad guy, you will never win, because the bad guys are usually stronger than you. However, if you start sharing with the other banks, with the other finance organization in Switzerland, you are no longer alone. You are becoming a huge team, a huge distributed team. And if you can collaborate so that if there is an attack against you, if you can tell the other bank that you have an attack, and if you need help, if you can tell the other bank that you need help, everybody will work collectively, and collectively we will be stronger than the cybersecurity guys. The message worked very well, and I built this Cyber Hub in Switzerland. We now have 100 banks all over Switzerland, banks and insurance companies, where we continuously share information. We do that in a confidential way. We don't share the information with organizations that are not part of that community. But this way, we are 100 times more powerful, 100 times more efficient against cybersecurity attacks than if you were alone. So I strongly advise, if there is one takeaway, please consider that your cybersecurity should not be something you should do alone. Please consider that if you have organizations that you trust, they might be your competitors, it doesn't matter. Share information with them, work with them. Your cybersecurity is not a business differentiator. You should be able to tell your competitor what kind of security you have in place, and he should be able to tell you exactly the same. That's not going to breach the competition. You are not sharing trade secrets. So please do that. This is currently the best approach we can have to ensure that we are protected against cybersecurity. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. Yes, now I want to thank you very much for taking time to listen to me. I hope I was not boring. I will participate to the question and answers that will take place afterwards. So I hand it over to you, and I will stay here. Please speak whatever language you want, and I will be here answering questions.
Thank you very much, Pierre. That was, for me, absolutely insightful and interesting as a board director who have next to no knowledge of cybersecurity. That was a really, really good primer, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think before we launch into the Myanmar specific panel, there was one question that perhaps we can already have you answer, which is from Krista A. Do you have an example of a community that was built in another institute of directors? So I think this goes to your last point, that as companies, we should be sharing our cybersecurity best practices and helping each other. Do you see any institute of director facilitating that anywhere? Or perhaps it's better facilitated elsewhere?
It's a very, very good question you're asking. I see government in several countries, such as the UK, for example, promoting Institute of Directors to share information on cybersecurity. I have not yet really seen Institute of Directors alone taking the full responsibility of putting in place this cybersecurity sharing. I have not yet seen that. One of the reasons being that Institute of Directors, you bring together organizations from very different horizons. And what I found out is, and again, perhaps I'm wrong, but that's what my experience tells me. People usually are okay to share with organizations that are in the sector. A bank is okay to with another bank. A bank would less okay to share with a petroleum company because they think we are in a very different sector. We might not have the same type of requirement. So, however, I do believe that the basic of cybersecurity should be the same for every organization. And deriving from that, I would strongly suggest that Institute of Directors take some responsibility to create this information sharing and establishing best practice. Yes. So my answer, I have seen that, but never seen IOD taking full responsibility. Yet I believe this is a wonderful idea, great idea to put in place.
Great. Thank you very much, Pierre. So I think Masu, we can stop screen sharing so that the next session we can see the speakers' faces if technology allows. So as I mentioned in the opening, we are delighted that two of our board members can join us, especially because they are some of the foremost experts in the field of information technology as well as in cybersecurity. So they are Dr. Tun Thurathat and Umay Pomiet. I think Koton and Komaik, do you just want to do maybe a very brief introduction of yourselves? Koton first and then Komaik. And then I suggest maybe we start with you, Koton, to talk a little bit, give a brief overview of the current situation in Myanmar when it comes to technology in general and then cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Matiri. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Tun Thurathat, founder and CEO of Myanmar Information Technology. So that's my private sector's background, and I'm also involved with the Digital Economy Development Committee and e-government committees. That's where I'm engaged with the cybersecurity initiatives and legislations regarding to the cybersecurity. Thank you. So we will introduce first, right? Then we will share in the next round, right?
Yes, please, Akko. So if Mike can introduce himself and then head back over to you, please. Thank you.
All right, I'll do a very brief introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Pierre and Mathieu, for doing this, and Koton for being a fellow panelist. I currently lead a BIM cybersecurity and BIM consulting as a managing director. I'm also on the board of directors for the BIM group of companies, and I'm also very honored to be part of the board of directors for Myanmar Institute of Directors as well as British Chamber of Commerce in Myanmar. So I've been in cybersecurity for almost 15 years, and doing a lot of work technically as well as now very much focused on solving business issues and cybersecurity issues that are related to business. And very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Dr. Koton, could you then give us a bit of an overview, please, on where we are in Myanmar with regards to cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you, Materi. Let me start with the sharing the current status and the landscape of cybersecurity in Myanmar context. So let me update you on the legislations, where we are in legislation at this moment on cybersecurity, and the public awareness as well as the competencies of professionals in Myanmar, and the institutional capacity of the organizations when it comes to cybersecurity. Currently, we do not have any cyber law yet. The government has been working on the draft, but we still don't have the law. And initially, we were looking at the e-government and cyber law, then e-commerce and cyber law. Now we are looking at cyber law as a separate law. And when it comes to legislation, many countries look at cybersecurity, cyber crimes, and privacy as under one law. In some countries, they are different. So Myanmar needs a law that require us to cover cybersecurity as well as the privacies. And since we don't have the law, it's the responsibility of the board of directors and management to protect ourselves and also to educate our customers and consumers. when it comes to public awareness on cybersecurity, we are at a very infancy stage. Many of us take cybersecurity for granted, and it's also mainly because of the digital literacy. Myanmar has very low digital literacies. Many users install the apps by requesting the mobile shops and service centers. People don't install the apps on their own. So that means that the passwords and all private data are not secure. So, when people transact banking transactions, all these security become threats to the users. And but we're still doing okay. And the one reason is that because in corporates in Myanmar are not fully digitized yet. So many of the data are on paper-based, still paper-based. So since they are not fully computerized and digitalized as we should, we don't see the threats at this moment in many organizations. However, financial institutions and large organizations are now preparing themselves to build up the institutional capacity of cybersecurity. That means that we are looking at the policies, regulations, and governance around the cybersecurity. And many companies also embrace the data privacy regulations and policies. So when we talk about data privacy, we are talking about how do we protect our customers' data and privacies. And one common question we ask is, who owns the data? Does the bank own the data of the customer, or the customer own the data? The right answer should be the customer own the data, and the bank or the credit card company are the holder and processor of the companies. That's where I think it's very important for the board of directors to understand the data privacy and protection as well. Well, the next item I want to look at is when it comes to cybersecurity. I think Pierre did a great presentation, excellent presentation and coverage. This is a good start for all of us. When I'm asked to give advice, I always start with this awareness at all levels. The customers, consumers, as well as the board of directors should be aware of the cybersecurity. And the first awareness is that we have to understand that we are vulnerable. Pierre mentioned about 100%. This is how vulnerable we are. In one way or another, we encounter these security incidents, and we should be prepared for it. And one thing I like to share is about the resilience, right? When these attacks happens, how do we bounce back from those attacks? This is one area we should be looking at. And the last item I want to touch upon this corporate cybersecurity preparedness is on data classifications. When we say data classifications, we're not just talking about data as in documents and database and records, but also the applications. It's important whenever there are attacks to our database, records, or the applications, the downtime or the information loss will impact not just financially, but also the image of the organizations. So we have to do assessment, risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, and the classification of all these data and applications that we organizations have. So let me stop here. I think maybe we can go another round on more in-depth discussion. So just to recap, I think cybersecurity starts with the awareness and know where we are, know that we are all vulnerable, and prepare ourselves. And the current status of Myanmar is not there yet. So we are on our own. The law will not protect us. So as a board of directors, we have to have the policies, regulations, and procedures to protect ourselves and our customers. It's a responsibility. Thank you, Thierry. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tuntarat. That's very, very comprehensive. Maybe you can take one question, which is there a special department in the Myanmar police for cybersecurity, it says?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned about this cyber security, cyber crime, and privacy. There are three different topics, three distinct topics, but they are closely related, right? So the police department will look at the cyber crimes that might not necessarily be, cyber security issues, right? So the crimes committed over the internet are all considered under cyber crimes, but cybersecurity is beyond that. So Myanmar has the CERT, which is an emergency response team. Again, it's about responding to the incident. It's not about proactive. It's not about a framework or a security framework. What we need is a framework to have risk analysis, risk assessment, and preparations, and not just being reactive.
Thank you very much. Could I then, thank you very much for that. And could I then turn to Gomai Pomian to add to that and go deeper on cybersecurity here?
Sure, Mathiri, and thank you, Gotun, and very kind of you to to provide the overall state of cybersecurity in Myanmar. So I would like to also echo the voice that earlier about Pierre and Dr. Turn, that cybersecurity is all about managing the risk. As board of directors, I think our responsibility is to evaluate, direct, and monitor, and it goes all the way from corporate governance to IT governance. Then it is cyber governance, right? So it's never, they are all closely linked and they're chained together. So from the perspective of shareholders or investors, right, it is all about, can we trust this organization with the data and security that they're providing? Are the controls adequate? Do they have the visibility of these end-to-end cyber risk, right? So it is go back to what Dr. Tim was saying earlier about risk management and then identifying the risk so that you will know what is the probability and impact of these risks. And that in itself will be able to do a very informed decisions on what are the investment decisions that you need to make for the controls. Otherwise, I think the risk itself we will be exposed to many of the things. And like what Pierre was saying earlier, right? It was 100% sure. It is not the question of if, it is the question of when. So when does that happen? When there is a cyber breach happen, when there's an incident, are we able to respond to these incidents in a timely manner, in an effective manner, and to control that? And first of all, of course, understanding the risk landscape, you need to first take a look at where are your crown jewels are, where your assets are. That's where information classification comes in. Of course, there is a different controls needed for highly sensitive data, highly secretive data, the proprietary IP data, and things like intellectual property and your corporate secrets. Those should be very different from public statements or statements that are meant for public. There are a marketing initiative. There are other things that your company is doing. There are different value is tagged at a different levels of assets, information assets we're looking at. And because of the digital age, a lot of these assets are residing on your computers and on your digital devices, not just merely on your laptops. It could be in the cloud, it could be in your mobile devices, it could be in your iPad. These are the things that we must ensure to look at. So first and foremost, I believe it is looking at how secure you are, where is your state of your current cybersecurity security, and that balance scorecard, which can tie back up to a risk management or risk balance scorecard of your organization, and that will give you. And you rightly said, Pierre, is that we should not let the security guy report to the CIO or CTO, because ultimately there is a conflict of interest, and this person should either report to a risk committee under the board of directors, or they should report to a COO or a CFO or even CRO. And some of them, there is an imminent conflict if they report to a technology person, because technology is about driving, and CISO is about actually controlling the risk landscape and ensuring that information is rightly passed over to the board of directors so that they can have an informed decision. With that, I think the first and foremost, we need to understand where the risk landscape is so that we have to identify what is our risk appetite and risk tolerance a particular enterprise will have. And then from then on, we try to see where are the areas for improvement from the outside in approach as well as inside out approach. So do we trust the people, and what are the customer privacy that we need to maintain? What is the level of security needed for certain data assets? And with that, I believe that we're able to do that. And that kind of comprehensiveness is unfortunately not matured enough in Myanmar yet, unfortunately. And if we compare our cyber maturity level compared to our neighboring countries, even like Cambodia, Laos, I think we're almost on par compared to more mature economies like Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia. I think we're a little bit far behind, and that's something that we could address, and that would actually help us to have a more developed digital economy, and that cybersecurity play a crucial role in that. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We have a question for you, which is, how is protecting IP different from other types of files?
So intellectual property, and I don't want people to confuse, because a lot of us in IT would think IP as an internet protocol, which is a different kinds of representation for IP addresses. This IP, what we're talking about here, is the intellectual property, which can be as deadly as a trade secret. So if this information got out, I think that could mean the end of the corporate or end of their competitive advantage. Say, for example, Coca-Cola will closely safeguard their secret formula. Why make that Coke, taste so special and different from Pepsi and other type of colas, right? So Coca-Cola will definitely do that, and Starbucks, and it may be a Samsung, it could be Apple, right? There are intellectual properties very different from every individual organizations as well as enterprises, and I think that understanding the crown jewels of how important is the data means that there is a necessary measures. For example, there is a nuclear launch codes that is secret, right? There is a multiple authentication layers for anybody to launch an attack. So that's the reason why you need a guy who's a colonel, at least in the Army or Marines. He has to be a colonel. Then he has to have certain privileges. It's a separation of duties there, so that there's no segregation of duties, so that you can have a piece of code only available to a certain person. Not everyone has the complete information. That will mean that protecting that data, right, is very different from other type of normal data. For example, it could be your email. Corporate emails are sensitive, I get that. But the thing is, protecting that data is very, very, very different from protecting a nuclear launch code. So how critical is your data? I can't say for sure. It has to be identified by the data owner themselves. And we're just like what Gochen said earlier, right? If you're a telco, if you're a bank, you're just a data custodian. You don't own the data, and we must differentiate that. I hope that answers Krista's question.
Thank you very much, Mike. How does that look like? I think you talked about classifying data. How does that look like in practice?
So in practice, right, a lot of us do not have the luxury of going through every file, every text, every images, every voice file, every email in your organization to classify that data. In practice, it is done in nowadays is artificial intelligence. They were able to recommend, it seems that this information is quite quite sensitive. Would you like to label that as secret? So you can just do a simple 3 classification levels. One is the confidential data, the other one is restricted, and the third one is public, right? So that will potentially give you a good gauge of how to classify data. If you think that this information got out, it could have grave danger to the organization, that could be a secret or confidential data. And if it is restricted, that means only certain people should have it. And then the public data obviously is meant for public, and that could be a start. And then there are many tools out there that's available, people, process, and technology, right? So if you look at people need to understand that the classification of data is very important. There has to be a robust process for people to classify the data. And thirdly, I think you got to have a right technology and tools to help you classify the data easily and efficiently.
Great, thank you very much. So we want to make this quite interactive. So if anybody has questions, please type them in. ဗမာလိုမေးလဲရပါတယ်နော်။ပြန်ပြီးတော့ remind လုပ်တာပါရှင့်။ So we do have a few questions as we were going.
There's a lot of questions going out, Matiri.
I have the team manning that, and let's take some of them. So to perhaps this is to either Ko Mike or Ko Tun, and this is from Michael Lee. Is there a program or an institution to train and educate employees to reduce cybersecurity in Myanmar? And by that he means cyber threat.
This is to Mike. Maybe it's time for me, sir, to share some information.
Sure, Gotun, thank you. Yes, Matiri, to answer Michael Lee's question, yes, there is an organization I am recommended by Gotun, and I'm proudly to be the co-founder of that organization, that is Myanmar Information Security Association. So one of the three pillars is about raising cybersecurity general public awareness to have cybersecurity professionals promote their skill set and their career development, as well as coming up with the policies and guidelines that are related to cybersecurity to protect their enterprises and businesses and public-private sector. So that is in itself is a Myanmar Information Security Association's, our pillars. But at the same time, you can reach out to us if you do need any sort of cybersecurity awareness sort of seminar, because we do have our friends from Australia as well as UK and the US. We're helping to build that practice together. So our objective is to really raise awareness. In fact, in October this year, October 2020, it is our Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we're thinking of doing a public event and roadshow for us to raise this cybersecurity awareness among not just the public, but also for enterprises and government agencies. So I work closely with Myanmar Computer Federation, where Dr. Tun is part of. So we are collaborating it together, and hopefully that will have some impact on raising the awareness of cybersecurity in Myanmar. Thank you.
Great. So maybe to go back on, I believe, Krista Avery's question to Pierre about whether IODs have groups to raise awareness and also share best practices. Would you say associations like MISA are other not-for-profit associations that we should be working together with?
Yes, we should be working together. I think there's no reason why we should not cooperate, because it's going to be a duplicate effort if MIOD does that, and we play a multiple role as well. And Dr. Tun is also on the Patreon of MISA, so I think we can collaboratively work together to raise this awareness. It can even be a public workshop later on this year, and we see if we can do an event together as well, more of a workshop style. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll take that away as an action point to follow up with you.
Thank you,
So given that you're also on the board of the MIOD anyway, so we will definitely be able to collaborate quite easily.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Gotun, we have a question from Svetlana Sen. Dr. Tun, how would you estimate the risk for the e-commerce sector for Myanmar now? Talking about the current situation on cybersecurity.
E-commerce has been, recently quite noted. The social distancings and travel restrictions. People are moving to e-learning, e-commerce, and everything online. So e-commerce has been growing fast. We are estimating as fast as 100% or more in the retail sector, and we now have food vendor and online delivery and ride sharing and so on. So and e-commerce is not just a sector, but it's a cross-cutting across all the sectors. And as I just mentioned, we do not have a cyber law yet. So the organizations and consumers have to protect themselves. One thing has to do with it, and many of the the customers are not using the mobile payment or credit cards yet, and 80% are still cash-based. So we do not see a lot of crimes with the mobile payments and credit cards fraud for e-commerce yet. But nevertheless, there are cases where the goods are delivered, but the order were refused by the customers, and there are many of them has to do with the legal frameworks, and it is not actually security incidents yet. So to answer your question directly, e-commerce is vulnerable, definitely, and we need legislation, the law, to protect cybersecurity. And at this moment, it is in the hand of the businesses to protect themselves and educate the consumers. And we have seen cases where there were frauds, and crimes against the mobile wallet users, and some banks claims that this is the end users' problems. It's not the bank problem. It is true, but when it comes to cybersecurity threats, incidents, the attackers will attack the weakest link in the chain, and often it's the consumers or the customers. So what I like to highlight and remind is that it's the responsibility of the businesses to educate our own customers and consumers.
Thank you very much, Koton. Just moving on, some of this you already covered, but let me read this out anyway. The question is from Garanto, and the question is, Dr. Tun, many thanks for explaining the current situation on cybersecurity. As you mentioned, there is a law from government on cybersecurity. As digital payments and transactions are growing in Myanmar exponentially, would be great to form a consortium to derive some guidelines for digital payments.
Yes, the payments has been an area where we see most progress in financial sector recently, and there are two initiatives led by the government and UNCDF. One is the RTGS, real-time cross settlement. So that's the interbank transfer, which can be settled or make settlement real time. In Myanmar, they call it the CBM net. So it is implementing, and it will go live early next year. So end of this year. So that is a good news for all of the banks and the customers. And the other initiative is the RTRP, real-time retail payments. That has to do with interoperability between the mobile wallets. So when that's and the timeline is by end of next year, all the banks and mobile wallets will be integrated. So we are looking at this unification as well as the payment interoperability. When that happens, the merchant could be from Cambodia, and the customer could be from Wave Money or other wallet issuer. So this is happening soon. But when it comes to consortium, I think this would be great to have. But currently, there is an association called NTEA, Myanmar Digital Economy Associations. I think I would invite everyone to join these associations if you are in payment, e-commerce, fintech, and so on. So it will embrace not just e-commerce, but all the digital economy organizations and businesses, and this will be a channel to the authority to advocate what is needed to be done in the private and public sector collaborations. I hope I answered the questions in a way.
I think quite fully. Thank you very much. Okay, this one is not directed to anybody in particular. Are there any rules regarding personal data protection, telemarketing, voice and SMS in Myanmar? The reason for asking the question is we're experiencing many advertisements called SMS from telcos how to stop this kind of situation, like in other countries, for instance, Singapore. And this comes from Kozor Tet.
Yeah, let me answer that. This is my favorite questions. So, yeah, we have this issue of spamming. People do not ask consent from the recipient. They do not ask you if you want to receive the information, but they keep sending you, right? And they also don't give you a choice not to receive further, right? Like, to deactivate or, some from this spam mail. So I think it's a serious problem here, and the regulator has to step in and stop that, because many telco, not just one, is doing that. And I have to do with that. They do not understand, and not only the privacy and also the code of the contract, as a telco, right, and as a business. And one is about data protection. Where do they get the data from, right? Number one. Number two is, why don't they have consent from the customers? They never ask customers anywhere or any point of time, but they keep sending data. So that's the one of the I think challenge problems we are having now. And nowadays we always talk about AI, big data. Data is new wow, right? Data is very valuable, and everybody embrace this. That's why we highlight that data is owned by the customers, individuals, not the organizations. Organizations are just the holder of and processor of the information. And with that, right, when customer data are to be used for AI and big data and data science purposes, they have to de-identify the information, meaning that they have to they have to mask the data, and the data has to be anonymous so that they can be processed for AI and big data. So all these has to do with education, my humble opinion. We need laws, and all these technological advancements are too fast for any regulator to do. We need to do is maybe as a MIOD, we have to educate not just everyone, including the telcos and all these telemarketing businesses.
Thank you very much, Kurtun. Sorry for the delay. I had a little bit of a tech delay. That is very comprehensive, and indeed, it's not just the telcos. I think all of us have been recipients of many unsolicited advertising emails with no ability to unsubscribe, and data protection is it's taken very seriously elsewhere. But as you say, I think it's just an awareness issue first and foremost. People don't know that this is private, and you cannot be spamming people just because you happen to find their emails. I did want to read out one question that Pierre had already kindly answered in chat, just in case anybody's not following chat. This comes from Ben Vivek. Hello, Ben. Oftentimes, cyber risks are more related to employees that are unaware of IT rather than sophisticated attacks. Do you have some tips for day-to-day cybersecurity for frontline workers? And Pierre responded, it's continuous education coupled with HR carrot and stick. So frontline people have to be incentivized to know and worry about cyber. If you could make this part of their yearly evaluation and associated bonus and promotion, that will change their behavior. Thank you, Pierre. And there's another question from Ellen Claire Maines. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly. What are the top 3 things that Myanmar CEOs should do starting tomorrow to respond to this risk? And Pierre, did you want to read your own answer, or maybe answer directly rather than me reading it?
What did I answer? I remember the last 2. I don't remember the first. Yeah, well.
You said you want to hire someone's task specifically.
Yes, yeah, of course, yes.
Yes.
That's the obvious one. Cybersecurity is probably the most dynamic risks we can see in the business world, because cybersecurity evolves all the time. Today you might have a secure environment, and tomorrow someone might find a way to attack that environment, and then your environment is no longer secure. It changes continuously. The only way to remain on top of of the attacks is to have someone who continuously worry about that, who will continuously listen to what's happening in the world and try to understand whether this type of attack could happen to our environment, and if so, he or she will take the necessary measures. So the best thing you could do is to appoint someone and make that person uniquely responsible for the cybersecurity of the organization. Does not have to be a technical person, has to be someone who can articulate a message meaningfully to the board and senior directors so that everybody understands what's going on. And in fact, usually technical persons are not necessarily well-versed in doing that. So you might try to find someone who is extremely good at speaking to the board, task that person to be responsible for cyber, and that person can hire or can recruit or can have some consulting companies providing the technical knowledge. The second aspect is, I know that from my Microsoft days, I know that the level of piracy in Myanmar is very high, and I understand all the reason behind that, and I'm nobody to judge. But just one thing you need to know is with every pirated software, there is a virus that comes with it. So if you have pirated software, I guarantee that you've got plenty of viruses in your environment, and bad guys already know what's happening in your environment. So if you can get rid of pirate software, I know it costs money, so there might be other solutions and whatnot, but pirate software is a vector for attack. And the last one is, I'm a bit cynical here, but in fact, it's based on my 30 years of experience in the field. You don't need to run faster than a tiger. You just need to run faster than your neighbor, because he's the one who will be eaten by the tiger and not you. So in cyber, you just need to be a little bit better than the rest of the crowd. So look at what the other people in Myanmar, the other organization in Myanmar are doing, and just do a little bit better. And doing a little bit better doesn't mean you have to pay more money. It doesn't mean you have to have a big budget. But if you have a clever person to look after cybersecurity for you, that clever person will know what is the little bit better that will make the cyber criminals' life difficult. So they will try to attack you, but if they see that your security is just a little bit better than your neighbor, they will attack your neighbor. They will try a little bit with you, and then they will fall back on your neighbor. So just need to run faster than your neighbor. So these are the three answers I provided to Helen.
Thank you very much, Pierre. I also just want to highlight that Vicky Bowman, who's also a board member at MIOD, has very helpfully copied this, because I get spams as well, or on the do not disturb SMS numbers that you can use for the various telcos. And thank you also to Peter Crowhurst, who is the CEO of the British Chamber of Commerce, where both myself and Komai Pomye are actually board directors, saying that the British Chamber of Commerce, Myanmar follows UK Data Protection Act, and MIOD should promote this, as everyone takes a lax approach here. And I think that's a very good point, Peter. Thank you very much. We should definitely look at increasing education, as Dr. Thun Tura was saying earlier. A lot of it is just lack of awareness, and one thing that we should be doing via our director population is promoting that. Thank you. We have another question, which is from Amya Khain, which is to Komai and Gotun. What risk management framework are you recommending? Any recommendations for fintech industry targeted to small and medium businesses in Myanmar?
Sure. May I answer the question, please?
Please go ahead, Komai.
Okay, so hi, Koang. Thank you for asking the question. So basically, in terms of risk management frameworks that is suitable for fintechs, especially in Asia, I do follow and I do recommend the Monetary Authority of Singapore, obviously from Singapore, TRM, so Technology Risk Management Guidelines. So that is a very good technology risk management guideline. Alternatively, you can use ISACA, the International Association for the IT Governance, Risk IT Framework. That is the second risk management framework you can put into use, and it's quite applicable and it's quite updated. Of course, as a greater corporate governance-wise, we do have two other frameworks, which is COSO's Enterprise Risk Management, ERM framework, or alternatively, you can use OECD's risk governance framework as well. But those are for very general risk governance. And I think that for fintech especially fast-moving, very consumer-oriented, a very fast-moving environment and technology environment. I think that would be a mass TRM from Singapore, as well as ISACA risk IT framework. Those are the two risk IT frameworks that I recommend.
Strongly agree with you, Mike. Strongly agree with you. Very good comment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I believe we've gone through all the questions so far, but if we haven't, please kindly ask again. And thank you, Mike, for typing all of that in, because I was making notes and having a hard time following all the different numbers.
Sure. Thank you.
So while we wait for more questions, maybe I'll open up to our three panelists to see if there's anything that you want to add at this stage.
Just one thing from my previous days. How could I say that? Vietnam has got very, 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 very strong cyber criminals. And I know that the Vietnamese teams have been looking at Myanmar for a long, long time. So please do not believe that because Myanmar is emerging and you have not digitized and everything, please do not believe that you are not subject to intense interest from bad guy. I know as a fact that some cyber criminals have a very, very keen interest in Myanmar because you are a big country, plenty of people, and therefore plenty of opportunities for them to make money one way or another. So you are not below the radar, you are in the radar.
Thank you, Pierre. I think we're definitely on the radar, and we're perhaps in the unfortunate situation of being ill prepared. So very important, I think, for all of us to be vigilant to protect the organizations.
And to add to that, Pierre, I think it's not only Vietnam. I think Myanmar is because we're in the very much neighboring countries that are, of course, India and North China, as well as Thailand. They do have certain interest economically as well as financially interest as well, and projects and status of what we're doing. The gathering intelligence is becoming part and parcel of all the nation-state sponsored attacks. So I do think that many of the sophisticated originated from these countries, and I think Myanmar should be aware of that, and we should have a robust cybersecurity response and detect framework should be in place.
To share something with you, I don't know if you've ever heard about the attack that took place in Iran many, many years ago.
Stuxnet, right? Stuxnet. It was Stuxnet, right?
Exactly.
2007.
Yes. Okay. So just to give you some information. So Iran was trying to have an atomic bomb, and they were refining uranium. And so they got attacked by Israel and USA combined. Okay, might not be true, but we all believe this is probably exactly what happened. Now, the interesting aspect is Iran was absolutely not prepared for this kind of attack. They had absolutely no cybersecurity defense whatsoever, but they learned extremely quickly. And so as a consequence to that attack, Iran started to develop significant cybersecurity expertise at the army level, to the point where right now they are considered to be a very significant player. You might know that Aramco, the Saudi Arabian petroleum company, got attacked many years ago, and the attack was called Shamoon, and it came from Iran. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't take much for a country to realize that they can make significant damage to their benefit by mounting some cybersecurity offensive capability. So right now, Myanmar is located in with a lot of quotes, in a reasonably peaceful environment when it comes to cyber, but it takes very little, very, very little for that to change, and for critical organizations in Myanmar to become subject to this kind of attack. wanted to say.
Thank you very much to our panelists. I don't think we have quite more questions at this stage. We have an additional comment from Garanto on the various security frameworks, the common security frameworks, which is in answer, I believe, to the question that Almia Kine had earlier. Would anybody...
About these frameworks, some of them are not even worth the paper they are written on. So it's
Okay.
careful. Some of these standards are really not good and not applicable. So I would go back to
Thanks,
what Mike
Pierre,
said
for
initially.
adding that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's make sure, since we have that on chat. Can you, if it's okay, can you point out which ones you should definitely not reference?
HIPAA, useless. GDPR, good luck with that one. Myanmar is not ready for GDPR. ISO 27000. Now we consider the ISO 27000 to be very, 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 very basic. So it's like, you know, if you go to a doctor and if he tests if you have a heartbeat, that's the equivalent of ISO 27000. It doesn't go very high. The one I would prefer most is NIST at this stage. PCI is only applicable if you're a finance organization and if you are dealing with credit card, and it's extremely prescriptive. So they tell you everything you have to do from A to Z. So, okay, these were my comments. But again, I refer back to Mike. Instead of saying which ones are the bad one, I go back to what Mike said, because the one he mentioned are the good ones.
Yeah, I think I want to add one point on the GDPR. I agree with Pierre, it's too much for Myanmar, but nevertheless, there are many things we can learn. And, you know, now that we have no regards to privacy in the entire country, not only businesses, but also individuals, and many things has to do with awareness. So I think, you know, we should start by studying them and look at what is, you know, even the US companies could not comply to GDPR in some cases.
Yeah, I think instead of GDPR, what is probably Myanmar should align ourselves to in the next, I don't know, couple of years or maybe in 5 years is PDPA from Singapore, Personal Data Protection Act, which is makes more sense. It has things like, you know, solicited images, SMSs, as well as emails, and, you know, all these things, right? Privacy is highly protected, and it's such a little bit more Asian way, I would say. So
Yes,
Kotan
I
and I
agree with you,
agree on
Mike.
that as well. Thank you.
When it comes to privacy, you have to learn to walk before you learn to run. And Singapore is a sophisticated country, and so they could apply PDPA. But we have to learn to walk first. So let's start slow. Let's look at the principle of PDPA. The principles should be our vision. What do we want to implement at the end of the day? That is fine. And then once we know the vision, we should determine what are the first steps we should do so that we walk first.
Great, thank you very much. Can I ask, maybe especially to Koton and Mike, you know, if we have to do a little bit of navel gazing in the IT landscape in the country, if as a corporate, I want to strengthen my my understanding of IT, my protection. And if I look at the talent pool available, how would you assess the current sort of talent pool in the country? That's the first question. Second is, and maybe the answer is associations that you are leading. How do we improve it so that we can catch up with very, very fast moving times outside?
Let me start with some basics. It's worrisome. I think the talent pool is not ready. We have very handful of specialists, and many of them are not certified. Right, for businesses and corporates, I think we want to have competencies with certification. We don't need as many certification as Mike, but we need people who focuses on each area, and you know, and the business, the management should you know, able to verify that they can do the job. So I'm not saying we should go after certification, but it's a way to make sure that our talent pools are ready for the challenge. And yeah, so we have many the IT professionals in Myanmar. There are like 5,000 graduates every year, and it's only the quantity numbers, but not the quality. And it's a very sensitive issue, right? If from the Ministry of Education perspective, we're not saying we're not doing a good job, but that there's a gap which industry need and what we are producing. So it's not just cybersecurity; it's in many areas of the expertise. So we need SMEs, subject matter experts, and we have to go into each area. And cybersecurity happen to be very important. The reason being that we are moving over to the fourth industrial revolution. That's where big data, cloud, mobility, AI, everything will move online and digitalize in a way, right? So every business is digital. This is it. So when that happens, we need a talent pool who are ready to take the challenge. And how do we verify we have these talents? I think one way of doing that is is through MISA like association, where I think I'll leave more time to Mike to share his thoughts. But I think association like MISA play a very important role, and we as a business community support all these initiatives, and it should be a movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam, for your kind, comprehensive answer. I'm just going to add two things to that. Of course, talent pool quite limited. I totally agree with you. Yes, we do need to take a look at our current landscape of education, where the secondary education to passing high school, coming to a university. A lot of the skill gaps are there. Many of the problem I think lies in the knowledge areas that we're doing. In the Bloom's taxonomy, there are 7 steps to education, right? So knowledge is about memorizing information, comprehension is about explaining others, applications about applying what you know. So I think in terms of talent pool, I think that we can find people who have knowledge, meaning that they know the stuff, but they can't really explain or apply in the real world. In the world of cybersecurity, it's all about experience and actually understanding, responding to threats and incidents, doing risk management. All these are hands-on experience, so you must be able to apply. So that talent pool for application applying is quite limited in terms of knowledge and comprehension. Yes, we do have a few, so we just need to upgrade that. So one of the objectives for MISA is to really adopt the cybersecurity skill development framework from neighboring countries like Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia to really take a look at what we can do to upskill these people and students, fresh graduates as well, to how to bring them into a workforce. We're also working with a number of entities to really, look at the education, and not only education, but basically doing project work. Our education system used to be that we need to memorize stuff all up until, 15, 16 years of age. So that really limits and hinders our ability to apply and solve problems or complex problems in that sense. Right, we are not equipped to do that, and I think graduates, many of them, are hindered from because their inability to have innovative approach to problem solving. So that's the biggest problem of talent pool, and cybersecurity is no different, right? So I think that our plan is to basically, and one of the pillars of MISA is to basically train our people, upskill our cybersecurity professionals, so that we are able to compete with the international community, even in the as far as the region goes. So I think that's where we are right now, and I think that it is quite worrying, yes, for a lot of the industry, especially because we're competing in the digital economy age, and it could be that all the talent pool will be able to go. It's not limited by a geographical location. So a lot of us, whoever is talented nowadays, being the brain drain, as you call it, they all are gearing towards to go to neighboring countries like Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia to work because of the better salary, better life, better improvement. I think that's the reason why we must keep the talent pool here so that they have an attractive environment for professional development in Myanmar as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comac. Do we have any other additions from either Gotun or Pierre?
I think Mike was very eloquent, and Dr. Toon as well. I don't have anything to add.
Great.
Nothing to add from me as well, Mathiri. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any further questions in the chat at the moment. But if there are questions, please do mention them. And I do request all participants please to contribute what is beneficial to everybody and refrain from advertising yourselves or your organizations if they are of a commercial nature. Thank you. If there are any further questions, please let us know now. Okay, I think that was an incredibly comprehensive overview and quite deeply detailed as well. I certainly felt that I learned a lot more about what cybersecurity is all about, and I hope that people who dialing in, especially those of you who are also industry professionals, got to know more. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any further questions, please let us know. We will type in our email, which is info@myanmariod.com, and any further direct questions that you would like to ask about this particular webinar, we will be very, very happy to follow up. And if you're not a member of the Myanmar Institute of Directors, we are an organization that raises awareness of corporate governance in the country, and webinars like this are what we do. But in addition to that, we also have trainings to equip you as a board director if you're already a board director, and if you're an aspiring board director, we also have programs to help you improve and path you from maybe you currently a C-level executive that aims to become a board member one day, and really what it actually means to be a board member. I think a lot of people here in our country are board members, but maybe do not understand what that responsibility entails. And as you can see today, to be a board member, you need to have quite a broad-based knowledge so that you can help your organization thrive and be protected. We actually have one more question coming in from somebody whose phone number. I don't believe I understand the question. The question, it says, why so far to learn the cybersecurity to be professional than others country? Sorry, I don't understand the question, so I'm unable to ask that to our panelists, so apologies for that. Please write to us. Again, thank you, everybody, and unless you have further questions, we will conclude this. But once again, I want to thank our three panelists and speakers for contributing your vast amount of knowledge, and actually also being very, very open and frank about the situation in Myanmar, as well as the various resources that we can rely on. So thank you so much. And thank you again to the governments of the United Kingdom and Australia who support corporate governance efforts in Myanmar. And thank you for the IFC and the whole team who are supporting us in so many ways. So thank you, everybody, and thanks to all of you participants for joining us. And we hope to see you in another seminar webinar soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.